So how much of a concern could this be for you if these new owners, whoever takes up Virgin Australia, aren't really that committed to regional areas?
Well, I've been concerned for some time, Peter. Ever since we first heard of Virgin's troubles, regional Australia relies heavily on the competition that is provided by two airlines. We know from the experience of when Ansett collapsed that prices increased somewhere in the order of 10 to 20% across regional routes. And so we're worried about going back to those days. It's very, very important. Now, I was heartened that the government appointed Nicholas Moore to be part of this administration process. I don't have insights into how it's going from a day-to-day basis, but I just hope that we do make sure that we have steps in place to guarantee competition in regional areas. That might not need funding, but there is some regulatory options that could be looked at as well to ensure that there's competition and adequate access to flights for regional Australians.
So the government still may be able to proceed without chipping in any more cash. You'd be sure about that?
Well, look, I'm interested in the results. Obviously, a direct way of delivering results is some form of support for regional routes, financial support. But there are other ways too, and I think we do need to look overseas. There's examples overseas where in Canada, for example, where when competition declined there some years ago, government stepped in to guarantee access to regional routes to support competition. Because I am concerned that some of the statements we've seen from Qantas seem very aggressive and bordering on predatory type behaviour, that they might be very keen to try and kill off any Virgin 2.0. And we need to make sure, and it's the job of government to make sure that there's a competitive landscape so that we can deliver good outcomes for consumers.
Just on these unemployment figures that came out yesterday, a couple of ones that are really interesting. Youth unemployment's at 16%. I'm wondering how concerned you are about this, particularly in regions where it could even be higher than that.
Well, look, Peter, I think the characteristic and distinctive feature of this downturn is how concentrated it has been. We've all been impacted to some degree from the lockdowns and what have you, but some Australians have been impacted much more. And so those that are exposed to tourism, hospitality, and especially young Australians who often work in those industries, they've faced job losses of 30% and higher in their industries, where some industries in the public services, mining, agriculture, you've seen not very many job reductions, sometimes job increases. So we've got to help and support those people in those industries. And I think we have to think about transitioning our assistance to a more direct method. We've the JobKeeper programs and JobSeeker are very broad across the economy, which is right to do. But as we seek to move away from those, we probably need to focus support on those industries that have been most impacted.
Yeah, so are you saying extend JobKeeper to those areas really struggling, such as tourism, particularly in North Queensland, far North Queensland, that are doing it pretty tough? And, you know, maybe even when it comes to JobSeeker, keep it higher so you can't go back to the level that it was. What's your view on that?
Well, look, I've been a long-term advocate for an increase in the dole. I think it was too low before all this, and I've said that, although I always felt and said that any increase had to be affordable and come after we got into a budget surplus, which now is a long, long way away, obviously, given what's happened. But so I do still see the need for a higher, what used to be called the Newstart allowance than what was there, but the problem now is how do we pay for it, Peter? The ACOS wants, the general demand is for $75 a week increase from where it was before. That would cost somewhere in the order of $5 to $6 billion, probably a bit more at current unemployment levels. That's a year. That's a lot of money. So we're going to just have to do our best to help everybody, but we have to realise now that we have a lot more debt. We're on track to having the highest debt levels at a Commonwealth level since World War II, and everything is going to become harder to do.
But I guess, $5 or $6 billion when compared to the 60-odd billion that the government just found behind the couch, maybe affordable now.
It's not. It's not behind the couch, Peter. It's not behind the couch. Every dollar we have spent during this crisis is borrowed money. Much of it from, more than half of it probably on current figures, from overseas, and that's got to be repaid. It's got to be repaid. So this is the problem. You get into this trap that, oh yeah, $1 billion here, $1 billion there, and before you know it, you're bankrupt. So we've got to be very careful against that kind of philosophy.
Yeah. Onto the borders. The Queensland Premier hasn't really committed, but she is saying that there's going to be a review at the end of this month. You know, July 10 looks like it's going to be the date that Queensland opens the borders, but it comes after the school holiday. So, you know, how much of an impact, a continuing impact, is that going to have on the tourism industry, particularly as we've been talking about, you know, North Queensland, far North Queensland?
Well, we just got to, I think the borders need to open as soon as we can. Obviously, there needs to be a plan put in place, and unfortunately the game playing that the Queensland Premier is engaged in has made it harder to put forward that plan and implement it. So look, I mean, it's a shame we won't have the borders open for the school holidays, but we've just got to focus on doing it in a sensible way. You know, I firmly believe that what has actually happened here is that a few weeks ago the Premier misspoke. She said September, and she probably didn't mean to. Her plan at the time had said July. And then the last few weeks has been this just game trying to backtrack from the Premier's mistake in a press conference. And the cost of that has been weeks of uncertainty for those tourism hospitality sectors that I've mentioned have been the highest impacted. And people's lives have been played with.
Just finally, you moved a motion to condemn calls to defund police. This is something that's sort of kicked up a bit of momentum in the US as well, but the Greens voted against that. What's your view on that, particularly in the light of that vision this week that emerged from the Central Coast of those two police officers getting attacked by that certain gentleman?
Well, look, Peter, I just believe our police forces deserve our support and thanks. And I can't believe the rise we've seen in anti-cop rhetoric, as you say, mainly in the United States, but there's a few here, like Greens MP in New South Wales, David Shoebridge, who is mimicking these trends. And our police have such a tough job. On average, a police officer is injured every hour in this country, just doing their job on the front line, keeping bad guys away from the good guys. And they deserve our help and our thanks. That was what the motion was for yesterday. And the Greens couldn't even bring themselves to say one word of thanks to the 80,000 police officers in this country. And I think that speaks volumes about their political party and their radical agenda.